Continue with the operation. You may fire when ready.
Yoda's Kane, Anakin has gone insane. Logan 6, Corporal Hicks, the gem had done, need a fix. Ripley, NPC, Daredevil, he cannot see. Bumblebee, K9, the Doctor, and Klingon wine. Old Bob Sandworm, stories that'll twist and turn. Baltar, Scimitar, Death of Tasha Yar. Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, Stormtroopers and Clone Wars. James Holden, Tweaky, John Koenig and Ziggy.
We talk about the series. You can join us live by picking up your phone now. We talk about the series. We're coming to you on your streaming services now. We talk about the series. Comics, books, and games, we go beyond the show now. We talk about the series. Come and join us as we sit and chat and we go on and on and on and on.
Well, good evening, Trekkies and Trekkers around the globe. Today is Thursday, June 26, 2025. Welcome to episode 644. Can you believe that, Eric?
So many.
644. Wow.
So many episodes.
Incredible. And you guys can find all of those episodes. Well, not all of them, the majority of them, over at trektalking.com. So head on over there. There's a lot of great stuff there. I'm your most excellent host, Uncle Jim. Welcome to the podcast. And I'm going to go around and introduce you to my awesome Trexperts. First of all, we have the man, the myth, the legend, our miracle worker. He's out in Portland. And there he is. Of course, we're talking about the man himself, David. Welcome to the show, David.
Yeah, it's really cool to be here.
And also out in Portland, lots of tribbles. I thought those were like chocolate candies or something back there.
Okay,
I don't
could
know.
be one of them.
No.
Yeah.
And also from Portland, we have our very own Eric. How you doing tonight, Eric?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm wondering if David put like bouncy ball and tribble into Chat GPT, and that's the AI image it gave him, because that's what it looks like.
I can change my background.
No, it's lovely. It's lovely.
No,
But
you know.
I was just going to say, so much like the Eagle one, I do feel like I'm being pulled towards the planet by a mysterious gravitational force beyond my control right now. So we'll have to see how that bodes for the show.
It's the magnetic field created by all that nuclear waste that's under the surface, you know.
Might be. Wait, what kind of waste, Jim? What kind of waste?
It's nuclear.
Nuclear. It's pronounced nuclear.
And
That's
also,
the Texas pronunciation.
It is.
Texas. Also from Portland as well. Do you see a pattern going on here? Also from Portland, we have our very own toy guy himself, Paul. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you, guys. And if you would have told a young, I don't know, 13, 14-year-old me that there would come a day when I would be on some kind of finagling computer radio broadcast show talking about what we're going to talk about tonight, my mind would have been blown. It's just that it would be something that we would still be finding interesting and chatting about in depth tonight, like we will, is just it's kind of mind blowing. So I'm super excited, and it's fun that we are getting to do this.
Absolutely. And I repeat, not from Portland, but from Las Vegas, we have our very own Charles. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Hello all, and what have a sorry, conversation just threw me off there. Sorry, things are going well. As you notice, yes, I do have a not a tribble on me. As a few fans know, it's Stitch Day. Because Stitch's experiment 626.
I did not know that. See that? It's not only fun, but it's educational as well.
There we go.
Yes.
So
of
while
course,
you guys are over,
may the Stitch be with you.
He made a Stitch be
Nice.
Oh boy. While you guys are over at trektalking.com, you'll find a link to the Patreon page where you can become a patron, just like our newest member, Joe Saporito. So truly
Joe!
welcome to our family, Joe. We really appreciate it. And I think all of you guys should head over to trektalking.com and become a patron just like Joe. On tonight's show, at the behest of Paul himself, this is our Space 1999 Super Show. That's right, we're going to be talking about Space 1999. We're going to start with the pilot. We're going to go through the catacombs. We don't know what kind of dust we're going to kick up while we're down there. We have a couple of Space 1999 polls, which we're going to have some fun with. We're going to talk about some Space 1999 guest stars. And maybe we'll see a toy or two. Who knows? You'll have to wait and see. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But we also have our fan shout outs, and that's where we say thank you to fans just like you for listening to this podcast. And we have our birthdays, and if time permits, we do have a few Star Trek stories to get to. So without further ado, so that we can dive right into our Space 1999, I think we should do some fan shout outs. What do you think, Eric?
Absolutely, man.
Okay, so you can head over to our Facebook page, which is Trek Talking and Beyond. You'll see the Live Long and Prosper pinned to the top. Just tell us where you're from. Leave lots of emojis. It gets my attention. If you see a heart next to your name from yours truly, Uncle Jim, then you will be featured in a future fan shout out. Take it away, Eric.
All right, I'm going to start out this week over in the amazing country of Belgium, and I'm pretty much going to stick to Western Europe myself. We're saying hello this week to Uriel Robert L. Delacourt, who's saying hello to us from Belgium. Thank you, Uriel Robert, so much for saying hello to us and for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoy both our voices and our lovely video that David has put together for us. Also saying hello this week to Wayne Till, who is hailing from England, sending us both that beautiful English flag as well as the Union Jack. Wayne, thank you so much for saying hello to us, and live long and prosper to you, sir. Hello as well to Ranier W. Bierman, who's saying hello to us from Mers, Germany, sending us 3 live long and prosper hands plus that German flag. Thank you so much for saying hello to us, Ranier. Very nice to hear from you. And last but not least on my list, we head back to the UK, and Sile Mack is saying hello to us from Wales. And is that a Welsh flag there? Paul would probably know.
I do believe it is a Welsh flag.
It's
friend.
a Welsh flag. Now I know what a Welsh flag looks like. Thank you for educating me, Sile, so much. Kapla to you, sir. Charles, I imagine you would like to say hello to some people?
Definitely. Start off with a warm welcome to Roxanne Waters from Washington State. Welcome, Roxanne. Top fan Jeffrey Wilson from Worcester, Ohio. Welcome, Jeffrey. Glad to see a top fan. Another top fan, James Robinson from Lender, Texas. So two good top fans. And Kat Gardner from Springfield, Missouri. Welcome, Kat. David, who's on your list?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I'd like to give a warm welcome to Ben Jackal from Los Angeles, where Trek was born. Cool. A warm welcome to a top fan, Dan Boyle from North Province, Rhode Island, USA. And another warm welcome to another top fan, Mary Steffen from Pennsylvania. And last but not least, another warm welcome to another top fan from Luc Brouilly from Quebec City on or in Canada. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, so Paul, who's on your list?
Thanks, David. I'm going to head us back to other parts of the universe here, some in the lovely continent of Europe. This first top fan has a name that makes me think they're either a renowned psychic or perhaps a ship's counselor of some kind. But I'd like to give it up to top fan Gloria Guidance in the spectacular province of Dijon, France, and a place I would very much like to go. And it's more than just mustard. Isn't that right, Gloria? Absolutely. So fantastic to hear from our friends on a Francais every now and then. Moving over to Sena in Germany, in Lower Saxony near Hanover. It's Martina Karas is phoning in and saying hello. Always great to hear from folks. Wow, what an area steeped in history that you live in, Martina. Pretty amazing. Absolutely astonishing things have been going on for a long time in your part of the world. A lot of history there. One of our fans who is in Belgium now, but living in Spain, Ariane Segers, well, from Belgium originally, but now living in Spain. There I go. I can read. It can happen. And it's so sad that they abort the Project Star Trek Park in Murcia. Okay, so apparently there was going to be a big Star Trek theme park there, and it looks like they maybe ran out of some funding there. What I would recommend that you do, Ariane, is go to Venice, which isn't too far from you. Okay, and there's a guy named Jeff Bezos. Okay, who's having a big wedding there this weekend, and he's got more money than God, and certainly has more money to know what to do with. And I think he likes science fiction, so maybe you could get him to fund that theme park there. Mr. Bezos, if you are hearing me right now, please help us out in Murcia, where Ariane needs that Star Trek theme park to get going. So a personal plea on your behalf there, expat Belgian living in Spain. Thank you, Ariane, for bringing that to our attention. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And finally, for me, it's top fan, big drum roll, Anistenes Cruz de Nascimento from the Aracahua state of Sergipe, Brasilia. Oh, man, do they know how to party down there? I'm telling you. What a magnificent country. Let's not forget, home still, despite mankind's best intentions, still the largest rainforest on the planet, replete with all kinds of critters, some of whom have not even been identified. Species unknown in the terra incognita of the Brazilian rainforest. Man, I would love to see that with my own eyes someday. What an exciting place to live. So, Antistenes, it is great to hear from you. Thank you for being a top fan. Thank you for checking out our podcast and Facebook page, and thank you for expressing your enthusiasm for Star Trek. The one thing we know that can unite everybody, regardless of where you live. Pretty spectacular. Let's see who Uncle Jim's got on his bandwagon this week. Uncle Jim, can you hear me, sir?
Why, thank you very much, Paul. Unfortunately, I don't have any top fans, but I do want to give a huge shout out to Ellen Silber from Schenectady, New York. I also want to say hello and thank you to Richard Charbonneau from Colorado Springs. Wish I knew some Trekkies in my area. Here's some of us. We're here on the podcast, so that's cool. We also want to say hello and thank you to Misty Mercer, who's listening to us in Illinois, USA. And last but not least on my list, you guys know why he caught my attention. We want to say hello and thank you to Kurt Donnelly from Roswell, New Mexico, who sends us an alien head. And that's what got my attention, the little alien head. For you guys that are watching this video at home right now, you might see all these great pictures that are scrolling by. There's me, my wife, and my daughter meeting Freddy Krueger at a convention. And all of these great pictures are sent in by awesome fans just like you guys. So if you go over to our Facebook page, Trek Talking and Beyond, and tell us where you're listening from, you can send us a picture and it'll appear right there with all these awesome pictures that are scrolling by right now. So please do that. We would appreciate it. And now, you know what time it is? It's time for our Star Trek polls, and that means the Poland song.
Poland, 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 you know we like knowing what you thought about the show, and we tried to share your opinions with all of our minions out there because they listen worldwide. So tell us just what you think, and together we will all drink Kanar and Romulan ale tonight.
All right. If you guys head over to our Facebook page, every week I try to come up with fun, informative, educational, ethical. No, I try to throw out some questions that are just fun. And you may have noticed in our opening song, that Eric managed to squeeze in Commander Koenig. Of course, he's from Space 1999, and the topic of tonight's show is Space 1999. So I decided to throw out some Space 1999 polls. So the first poll, well, anyways, you'll figure it out. You want to roll the video, David?
Yep, here goes.
All right.
Wow.
Well, you guys saw the video,
Wow.
so go ahead. What is the
What an
question,
introduction
Eric?
to Space 1999. Wow. that was-
I'm just thinking to myself, well, now I have to watch season 2.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Hey guys, let's get the audience. Let's show them the worst part first. Get it out
Oh,
of the
that was
way.
amazing. What are you talking about? Okay, so so Space 1999's second season episode, The Metamorph, introduced Maya, played by Catherine Schell. Do you think she improved the series?
I guess.
And 77% of our respondents said yes. So, man, I can't wait to see what it
Wow.
was before that. 23% said she didn't make it any better. But I have to say that you know what? That was a totally different vibe from season 1, which is the only Space 1999 I've seen. But I'm into some super cheesy sci-fi, so I might give it a shot.
I got to tell you, have all of you guys watched Buck Rogers when it was on TV?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, when you think of Buck Rogers, you probably think of how cool Hawkman was, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you think Hawkman was so cool, but Hawkman is the only part of season 2 that's worth a crap. Okay, if you go back and watch season 2, it's total crap. Yet you'll say to yourself, Hawkman was so cool. Well,
He was like
I-
Boba Fett, man. He was
Yeah.
kind of like the Boba Fett of Buck Rogers. He was cool.
awesome, and
He was a badass.
I put Maya in that category. I think Maya is just so cool, yet season 2 sucked. But she's the coolest part of it. And when you think of Space 1999, you think of Maya and the shape shifting alien. And what you don't realize is she's from season 2, which really wasn't that good, but you remember her. And, that's what I think about her character. I think she was a great character. She was cool, but not enough to save it. So, I think
Well, that commercial just made me want to watch season 2. So
I think I'm with the minions. What about you, Paul? What did Maya make season 2 any better for you?
Well, here's the thing. Catherine Schell is delightful. Okay, she is a
Sure.
really decent actress. I think she's great. I first saw her in like one of the mid run Pink Panther movies. I think that's what got her this job, and she's really great. She still does the convention circuit, right? Goes out and signs people's memorabilia and stuff. And she was the whole thing with season 2 just. For a little bit of context is the investors were concerned that it wasn't American enough of a show and that it wasn't like exciting enough, right? So they brought in a guy who Star Trek fans should know by the name of Fred Freiberger, right? He's the same guy that they brought in to improve Star Trek in its magical third season, right? And so a lot of the stuff he did to Star Trek to zip it up and make it more, so people in the living rooms will like it. He did the same thing with season 2 of Space 1999 and gave it that really hyper caffeinated disco theme. And they brought in the character of Maya, and she's very fun and she's likable and stuff. But I don't know that she helped the show though to really address the question. I think that because she's just part of a lot of other things they did, and the actors were trying their best. I think with what they had to work with. But with okay, you jump across the screen, and then we'll cut to a leopard, and it's like something we would have done in like film class in the eighth grade, right? It's not super great creative special effects. I mean, I think they were really getting goofy, and a lot of the more esoteric, you know, 2001-esque sci-fi from season one went by the wayside. So love Maya, love Catherine Shell. I don't think anything could help season two though.
What about you, Charles?
I'll answer this way. I'll let you know when I get around to season 2. I'm still in season 1.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. David, I know you and I chatted a little bit about this yesterday.
Yeah, I'm. I haven't seen season two either, so I was still kind of going through season one. But so I don't know. I don't really have an opinion about this one in particular. So yeah.
All right, cool. Well, our next question is going to require two. That's right, two videos. So, David, why don't you run the first one?
All right, cool. Yep, here we go. You guys ready?
Hit it. All right, guys, that was the opening sequence from season one of Space 1999. And as Paul said, they revamped season two, and part of the revamping included changing the opening sequence. Of course, why wouldn't you? So, David, roll the season two intro, please. All right, guys. So there you have it, the intro for season one, and the revamped, more modern intro for season two. So now that we've watched them both back to back, Eric, what is our theme? As if people can't guess what our poll
Yeah,
question
I mean,
is.
of the two seasons, what intro is your favorite? And so 81% of our responders said that they like that season one intro better, and only 19% like that second season one better. And I'll say Barbara Bain's looking pretty foxy in that second season one, but the first season one is just so cool. I love the way that it switches between the epic orchestral music and the disco music. And of course, doing the Mission Impossible thing where it shows like all the things that are going to happen during the episode in those opening credits. That's awesome. That's totally awesome. So yeah, I'm way on the side of the Minions on this one. I think season one was way better.
I think the classic Barbara Bain, Martin Landau head turning at the
I
beginning
mean,
of the
dun, dun,
da, da,
dun. They're just like, and he looks towards her, and then she looks back towards the cat. It's
it's
just great. I love
it's
it.
classic. It's classic, and that disco music theme that
Yeah,
goes along with it on this episode with all the, it's classic.
but
And
they did something with Barbara Bain in that second season one. Man, she's like her hair's feathered or something. I don't even know. She looks
and
really.
and Koenig turning around and firing the phaser. I
Pew!
forgot
That was totally
whatever
a
it is.
Han Solo moment.
It just yeah. I gotta go with season one. I'm with the Minions 100%. How about you, Paul?
Well, I'm a season one guy completely, and like it's if folks are new to this whole concept and they're like, "What are they talking about with this TV show?" Right? We'll talk more about that, but I almost like try to say, "Oh, this is just a rumor that season two even existed." Right? No,
So
you don't really
true.
want to do that. Don't do that to yourself. No. It was a bad porn company that tried to pretend that there was a second season. You don't want to go anywhere near it. No, like, clear your browser history, clear it. But no, it's just it's goofy stuff, right? I mean, I just loved season one. Season one is just it had a little bit more of a epic vibe to it, with the we'll get more into details, but as far as opening music goes, yeah, season one, Jerry Anderson's veteran composer Barry Gray was behind a lot of that music, and he gives it that oomph, that gravitas at first, and then it just kind of explodes into contemporary craziness with the synthesizers. So it's really fun, and it just like Eric said, very Mission Impossible, showing you here's what you're going to see. Just to get you titillated for that episode that's going to come. It's like, and you knew that if it was a Jerry Anderson production, one thing you would definitely get to see a lot of was explosions. Okay, this man loved explosions. Things would be exploding constantly. So,
Uh, David, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely thought the season one theme song was much, much better. I don't know why they changed it, but yeah, I'm with the Minions on this one. The season one definitely way better, way better.
Well, Charles, you got the caboose on this one, buddy. Are you with the Minions or against the Minions?
I'm sort of in between. I do like the simplified, more action look of seasons two's shots without the in this episode, which teases so much the episode. But music wise, I'd much preferred season one because I liked the synthesized disco theme to it. So I love the music in
Yeah.
season one. I kind of like a little bit of how they don't do the teaser shots in season two.
what's hilarious about season two is it's like you could tell they're like really trying to make sure people watch the show, right? So they give you this really ridiculously expository, explanation of the premise: massive nuclear explosion, Earth. Moon blown out of orbit. It's like, in case you've never seen the show before, it's like they give you a fast catch up on the whole premise. It's like,
All
we
right.
get it. Okay, we get it.
I know, that'd be like Star Trek being like, there's something called the Federation. There are ships that explore.
Yeah.
Explosions everywhere.
Yeah.
Explosions everywhere.
Tribbles everywhere.
Well, but
Tribbles, tribbles, tribbles.
the thing is, if you get a few episodes in, if you didn't catch the first couple episodes, you don't quite understand what's going on with this moon base.
Moon base
Whereas
alpha.
that
It's
does
true. You're probably
explain.
tired of it by episode 20 of season two,
Yeah.
though.
All right, guys. So, in case you hadn't guessed, this is our Space 1989 Super Show, and we've discussed the addition of the Metamorph. We've already talked about which intro was better. So let's talk a little bit about the show, and we're going to turn that over to Paul. So take it away, Paul.
Thanks, Uncle Jim. Okay, friends, why are we talking about this show, the Space 1999? 1999, a lot of people who are, fans of the podcast are like, I wasn't even born until after then. Why does they think 1999 was far off in the future? Well, this show was made back in like 1974, right? 1975 is when it first premiered, right? So it would be like if right now we started a new show and we set it in the year, 2050, right? It sounds like it's much far flung, right? And we've seen how little progress man actually makes in a quarter century. But, at the time in the early to mid 1970s, 1999 seemed like it was way off down the road still, right? And so you got to go back in time with me a little bit, especially folks who weren't around back in the early 70s, because when this show came out, as science fiction fans, all we'd had for as long as you could remember was an endless diet of syndicated Star Trek reruns, and that was it. right? There's very little big science fiction at the time, right? I mean, a couple movies every now and then. Once in a blue moon, there might be another TV series, but nothing had really, it had just been Star Trek syndicated on your local affiliate station forever. And keep in mind the timeline, friends, okay? As of this point, Star Wars didn't exist. Nobody knew what the hell that was. We had no idea that that was coming down the road in just another year or two, other than like the occasional vague reference in Starlog magazine. We had no clue, right? So this thing came, and it was at the time very exciting. It was the mastermind of behind these shows, a guy named Jerry Anderson, who those of us who grew up with any kind of British relations, you learn pretty early about Jerry Anderson shows because he was a British TV impresario in the 60s who did all of these puppet shows, right? And when I say puppet shows, I mean like shows that were science fiction shows, but instead of human beings, they would star marionettes, right? Shows like Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet. That's the kind of stuff they were riffing off in Team America, World Police, right? If you remember seeing that movie, it's all totally making fun of Jerry Anderson movies because his whole thing was, yes, marionettes and incredibly cool vehicles that looked real, that were really great, and that continues through Space 1999. And every 5 minutes, another explosion. I mean, that was just his whole thing through all of his shows. And gradually, as they matured and got tired of doing the whole marionette thing forever, the Andersons got into doing live action shows. And they first did a show called UFO that also has a huge cult following that might be fun to do sometime on someday. But it was great. And initially, they had planned to do a second season of UFO, but the powers that be with the purse strings got involved, and so it eventually morphed from being a second season of that show to being a completely unique animal, which became Space 1999. And they got it may seem like a ludicrous premise, right? The moon is somehow blown out of Earth's orbit to go flying through the galaxy to meet a new planet every week. And it was kind of, at the behest of the financiers. They wanted to make sure that, everything had to be set on the moon and with recurring characters, but you had to travel through space, and you had, because all these sets had already been built for moon base, right? And you had to travel through space and see a different episode of the week, right? Different race of aliens or a new threat every week. And so that's kind of where the premise was born. But for me, it was super exciting back then because we'd had nothing but Star Trek in forever. And here was a big budget show with familiar actors. We knew Martin Landau and Barbara Bain from Mission Impossible. And they, as we'll talk about later, they got some pretty big talent as far as actors coming on here. So it was very exciting. And in the first season, especially, it was a little bit more, a little ethereal sometimes, but science fiction more along the lines of what you'd think from like 2001 in terms of the look of it. And the special effects for the time were amazing. We had never seen special effects like this on TV before. We hadn't really, Battlestar Galactica wouldn't come along for years until after Star Wars, right? So nothing like that yet. So this was really unique. The special effects were phenomenal. I'm going to give you a little peek of some of the stuff we can talk about here today. But yes, friends, the first time ever there was merchandising. There were like paperback adaptations with cool like photo inserts to titillate you to watch the episodes, right? Which were amazing. So there was all this crazy stuff going. Yes, there were merchandise. Yes, there was Mattel getting into the fix. I believe that Uncle Jim has something he's going to be showing us later about Mattel, but you actually were able to get a Barbara Bain and Martin Landau action figure, which was amazing, kind of that whole Mego style thing that Mattel was doing. So it was pretty crazy. And so for a couple of years there, it was just really exciting to have something brand new and really cool that not took the place of Star Trek, but just added to the science fiction universe. And as we were going to see within the next couple of years, science fiction was about to become more popular than we had ever imagined. So pretty crazy, but it's a goofy show in a lot of ways. A lot of people sort of refer to it as a guilty pleasure, but I will always have a huge fondness for the show because of the time in my life when it aired. And I think it's just the look of it and the stories and some of the stories the and the designs of the vehicles and the characters really, I think, endure. So I was really fond of it.
I'll tell you, I used to run home from school, and on PBS we only had four channels. Back in the day, this is how long ago this was. There was four channels, and PBS would show Space 1999, and right after that would be Doctor Who, and I'm talking about the Tom Baker Doctor Who. That's how long
No,
ago this was.
no.
Yes, yes,
Baker was
yes.
80s. Baker was 80s. You're
No,
talking
it
a
was.
doctor before
It,
that.
nope, I'm talking Tom Baker with the scarf, and I would watch Space 1999 and Tom Baker as Doctor Who, and that's how I got my fix. And one of the things I remember about Space 1999 was the Eagles. Like, weren't they cool, or what? Look at them. How cool were the Eagles? They could do everything. They had an interchangeable centerpiece that could come apart and
Oh,
do God knows whatever, whatever they needed for the episode, the Eagle could do. And let me tell you, Alan Carter could crash an Eagle like nobody else could. I mean, I think every other episode he crashed an Eagle. But, so yeah, and I also remember you guys, like Paul was talking about Star Trek. One of the things that really caught my attention about Space 1999 was the colors. Star Trek space was black with white stars, and that was it. But if you guys noticed the opening sequence that we showed of Space 1999, it's purple, it's blue, it's red. Space was full of color and full of life. And that was one of the things I remember when I was watching it. Every planet wasn't the same, they were all different. And so, and that funky music, who could forget that? It just was completely different than Star Trek in so many ways. And, you know, it wasn't as popular as Star Trek because Star Trek was on every station every night continuously. Space 1999, I had to go to PBS to watch it. So I didn't watch it as much as I watched Star Trek because it wasn't as available as Star Trek. But as Paul said, if you wanted to watch your sci-fi, there wasn't much really out there. So that's my take on Space 1999. Anybody else want to share a story
Also,
about
too,
Space 1999?
I think the thing that maybe it was just because I was, I don't know what, 13, 14 years old at the time. Um, I found that it seemed like Space 1999, it was a little more dangerous to be in outer space, right? It was like you were going to get sucked out of an airlock, or some monster was going to come after you, or your helmet would explode and you'd have explosive decompression. I mean, there was people were always getting killed on this show, pretty attention gettingly, right? Is that a word? Can it be? Can we
Oh
say
yeah,
that?
for sure. I mean, that was one of the first things I noticed when I started watching this show, Paul, was the fact that there were real stakes, and the show has kind of a like a darker melancholy tone to it too. There's no comedy to speak of, like compared to the original Star Trek, right? And I kept wondering if like major characters were going to get killed off on a regular basis. I came to find out later about this whole like episode order thing that didn't allow killing off of too many major characters, but yeah, it seemed really dangerous.
Yeah, and there was only 311 people on Moonbase Alpha as of the breakaway episode. I didn't count how many people died, but I think their population was dwindling.
well, I
Yeah,
would say,
yeah.
And so, you know,
I was starting to wonder, like about midway through the first season, I'm like, are they going to run out of Eagles, right? At some
yeah,
point?
Right, and
because like,
I'm unclear on how many eagles there were. There's the one episode where everybody kind of like goes crazy and they all fly the eagles away, and I think there's one shot that shows like maybe 11 of them or so. Is there a good count on how many eagles they started with?
Have you seen the one episode? It would be in season one where they show like the interior of the hangar, like the underground hangar.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's gantries and stuff, and it
Oh, that's right.
implies that there's
Yeah.
tons of underground stuff, right? All this different thing. But I think the real answer to your question, Eric, is however high of
Many
a
they need.
number that Commander Koenig says, that's how
Yeah,
many eagles there are.
yeah.
Eagle 12, Eagle
Right,
14.
right.
It's just, and you just bought it that there would be this,
Yeah.
endless number of them, right? But yeah, people were dying on the show and they were
Yeah.
crashing stuff and all kinds of craziness would happen. It's fun.
Well,
Well, according to the Space 1999, I think it was Charles. Somebody posted the Space 1999 archives in our chat, and I went and I looked it up. And apparently, they got all the minerals and everything they needed to build Eagles from the moon,
Sure.
and they would build them as they needed them. So I don't know how many they started
Wow,
with,
impressive.
but Alan
I mean, Lord
Carter.
knows how they grew food without a sun in interstellar space, but
Well, all because because they had a hydroponics lab on Moonbase Alpha.
Yeah.
It's all in the
Must
archive.
have had some amazing inertial dampeners to be able to be moving at that high rate of
oh my
speed.
gosh, yeah.
Right?
There's one of those first couple episodes where they shoot like light years away and at a moment's notice, and yeah,
You just
yeah,
had to go. That was the thing about this show. You
yeah,
just had to go with it, right?
yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons I'm so fond of season one. And when you compare them, you'll notice the differences. Yeah, you brought in Maya in season two, right? But the big difference was season one. You had this guy named Professor Bergman, right? And he was a very distinguished English actor named Barry Morse, right? And so the fact that he was like a scientist, right, and was part of the triad, their equivalent of like Kirk, Spock, McCoy. You had a scientist, and he would always make some kind of bullshit explanation for what they were having to do or experience, but he just said it in such a convincing way that you thought, well, that's probably true.
You bought it.
It's just,
You bought into it.
well, we just traveled 7 million light years, John, through a special drain opening I found in Alpha Centauri, and somehow he could sell the most preposterous stuff, and you buy it. Well, Professor Bergman in his like super big, like flared bell-bottom pants says it's okay, so it must be true.
You know,
So
Well,
Charles, you were gonna say something where yeah,
well, I was going to say the fact that the number of term red shirts they had. But okay, dark episodes, I'll come back to it. But one of Paul's mentioned, and I can understand it, is Dragon's Domain. But before we talk about that one, I want to talk about Voyager's Return. That, okay, this was written in 1975. Voyager didn't launch till 77. And yet this is the one that, this is the same ship that Star Trek The Motion Picture talks about. V'ger is Voyager 1. And for them to discover this ship saying, okay, this ship, it launched in 77. They said it launched in 85. And then 15 years later, the ship was coming back. And to be interacting with that, what they did with the interaction with that ship and the engine system that they use, which was
The Quella
the
Drive.
Quella
blood
drive.
drive,
The Quella Drive.
which I'm all saying is like it's a radioactive drive, and it's like, wow, that's an interesting concept. But that was just an interesting episode of okay, we're going to take what's going to be a history that hadn't occurred yet and talk about this ship. And it's like, wow, that was an interesting projective of what Voyager would be doing in the future. But as Eric said, dark. And I think Paul might be a good discovery on this. Dragon's Domain, that thing was dark. That thing I can understand younger fans getting nightmares from that one.
Yeah, a bunch of years before Alien too, about 3 years before Alien. So we hadn't really had a scary monster in outer space really, like
Other than what we
to that
had,
degree, like ever, right?
other than what you'd had in, say, Twilight Zone, and even those weren't quite
Yeah,
that
yeah. And all
scary.
of a sudden, this was in like, in your living room, scary, and I mean, without getting too graphic, I mean, they find a monster, this one character does, and what that monster does to people is pretty horrific. I mean, it really was, and it just did not shirk. And it's just, if you're a young teen seeing that stuff, I remember I was just like, oh man, it was just like blew my. I mean, I didn't see a lot of graphic monsters other than like the occasional Christopher Lee Dracula movie, or something like that. I hadn't, or Godzilla, right? But to see a monster that's doing this to people, I mean, like, like like eating them like corn on the cob. I mean, my God, it was just like I was not prepared, friends. I was damaged.
Well, one of the things that I remember is, why would you put windows that open on a moon base? I mean, like, why would you want to open a window to outside? That was one of the things. And why would you put glass windows of all things on a station? That was kind of weird. And
Yeah.
is there oxygen in the catacombs under the of the moon? How could that be? You
Well, they
know,
knew. I mean, it's weird. They don't. I don't think they knew this at the time, but they found there. It does sound like recent sciences. We haven't actually been there yet, but they've been able to identify what looks like polar ice in parts of the lunar surface. And I know there's some scientists believe that it's possible to convert that into like oxygen at some point. I don't know how likely or real that is, but it sounds like there's a potential for it. Or if there was like underground frozen lakes or frozen ice or something like that, if it's something that's different than you know, asteroid scarred surface, possible.
Well, it's
And to me,
very.
it's
I mean,
super easy to suspend disbelief for that, given all the other
well,
nonsense that they
I mean,
have
it's
as
very
a.
realistic too to just imagine that they dug out a bunch of tunnels and pumped it full of air. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not the most like fantastical thing that happens on the show, I don't think.
so
It's easier for me to believe that than like it's easy to get up in the morning and get into your shirt by having a single zipper that goes down one sleeve.
Down your arm.
I'd be like, my boss would be like, "Have you showed up for work yet?" I'm like, "No, I'm still trying to get the shirt on." It's like it's just the weirdest thing, but it had such a look to it, man. It was great, And I gotta just throw this out: our co-host V was not able to be with us tonight, so V, our thoughts are with you. But V found a hilariously amazing clip of an interview with the Andersons where they talk about some of the stuff, how the show came into being, and some of the challenges they faced. And it is hilarious because they're like so unfiltered, right? I mean, they have no problem being catty about anybody. It was one of the most illuminating things I've ever seen on the show. So check that out if you ever have a chance, folks. It's we can try to see if we can put the clip up maybe to post it if that's possible. But it's hilariously, it was just fascinating.
so Paul, let's we've jumped all over the place, but for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
So
for the
we haven't even gotten general thoughts on the show yet.
yeah,
Oh
for
no,
the
I'm
fans that,
sorry. That's like
for the
I'm a
fans
train wreck
out there
today.
that weren't born or have never seen it, why don't we start with Breakaway and talk about that one to set up? Well, we should have done that first, but why don't we? Why don't you set us up with Breakaway?
All right, man. So it's just like as we saw in the preview for season two, right? It's the year 1999, and we're doing space travel, right? And at this point, mankind has established a permanent base on the moon, Moon Base Alpha, right? And it's a huge installation. It's got dozens of these spaceships that are there, right? And uh, uh, just craziness, right? 300 and some odd people that are living on this moon base, right? But one of the things we're doing on the moon is we are storing all of our nuclear waste there in these disposal areas, right? So it's not on the because apparently nuclear power has become very popular, and we want to make sure the Earth is okay, and so they store all the nuclear waste on the moon in these containments. But something goes wrong in good old Michael Crichton style, right? And this kind of something always has to go wrong, right? And basically, through some fancy pants science explanation, I won't bother to get into, the nuclear waste goes supercritical, and there's a massive explosion that basically acts like an engine and pushes the moon out of Earth's orbit sending it hurtling through the cosmos on a series of adventures, right? From week to week, where they will be, the traveling moon will pass through, apparently there's another galaxy or solar system every 10 miles beyond Pluto, apparently, is the science lesson I took from the show. And that's basically the setup, right? And so basically, there's Commander Koenig, who's the stern leader, and there's Dr. Russell, his Helena Russell, his sometime friends with benefits and sometimes chief medical officer, and then there's Professor Bergman, who's the scientist and Scotch swizzling man of reason. So, but that's basically the setup. So, Eric, why don't you embellish what I've not? This you're a little newer to the Space
Oh
1999
yeah, no,
universe, yeah.
super
So
new. Yeah.
let's hear your take on it, man. It's supposed to crusty old veteran take.
Yeah, I mean, so this show would have come out when I was 2. So I definitely did not watch it back then. I started watching it probably about 6 months ago or so, at the behest of Paul, who said it was an incredible show and I should watch it, and so I started watching it. And I'll say that I have been pleasantly surprised with how much I've liked it in general. So I haven't seen any season 2, but right from the get-go, the very first thing I noticed was its similarities in both style and pacing to 2001: A Space Odyssey. You mentioned that before. As a huge fan of that movie, I just kind of noticed that it had a little bit of a slower pace to it. People were intentional with the way that the character interactions took place. Things were subtle. You don't get big moves too much, but somebody might say something by just putting a hand on somebody's shoulder, or doing subtle things. So that part of it I really liked, because immediately I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. 1968 was 2001. 7 years later, 7 years later, they're using that as kind of their touchstone. I will say, if I had seen this as a kid, I would have probably gone a little nuts over what I call the timey-wiminess of it all, because there's some distance things that don't really scientifically make sense. There's some like timing things that don't really make sense. I am completely willing these days to suspend disbelief and just like ignore that stuff and enjoy the show for what it is. But I think my super scientifically minded like young self would have maybe gotten caught up in the minutia of that. So I'm actually glad that I didn't see it until I was more of an adult. I'll say, as Jim was just talking about, I thought the Eagles were awesome. It's a great spaceship design. The whole like massive truss thing with interchangeable parts, modular design. I really, really dug that. And I already talked a little bit about the tone of the show, the fact that it had a little bit of a melancholy darkness to it. I as an adult, I'm watching it knowing that it's a British science fiction show, despite the fact that it stars American actors who I now understand got their parts. We'll talk about this during Remembrances too, but kind of got those parts during downturns in their career, and they actually moved over to Great Britain in order to work on the show, and that even wasn't the kind of like renaissance of their career necessarily, because it was only a couple of seasons worth of work. Um, but I kind of get that like melancholy nature of British television sort of working its way into this too. So I can appreciate that. I will say that um, unlike Star Trek, which has a tendency to kind of like set up a problem, come up with some techno babble to kind of solve the problem, and then everything's kind of fine at the end of the episode. This show feels really different to me. It feels like, bad stuff happens. Um, People may or may not die, and at the end of it, it doesn't feel like everything kind of goes back to normal, which is, I guess, why the discussion of the ordering of the episodes is so fascinating to me. So I brought this up in our private chat, but uh, I watched this on Amazon Prime, and Amazon Prime has the episodes in a certain order, which I understand is the same order that the DVDs have the episodes. But if you Google episode order, they're totally different. Like they're all mixed up. And I mean, we're talking the era of episodic television where things don't necessarily carry through from one episode to the next. They're meant to be viewed as 24 different little mini movies during season one. Um, but the fact is that actually some things do change along the way, and so anyway, I had to kind of get my story straight with that. And Paul posted a fantastic article, which we could probably share on our Facebook page too, that kind of describes the nature of the ordering of the episodes, and you know why in some ways it doesn't really matter, except for a couple of uh, exceptions to that rule.
Commissioner Simmons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, so yeah, the acting is kind of reserved. I will say that I find Martin Landau's performance as John Koenig to me it has a little bit of a like William Shatner element to it. He kind of has like really intentional hand gestures. Sometimes you could tell that he was being directed to like do certain things with his hands, and um, it felt like there are some parts of that I'm kind of like feel just a little plastic and unnatural to me. I mean, I'm just digging into like critical minutia here, but like as a person who has watched a lot of science fiction by the time of my adult life, that's something that I noticed. I'm like, oh, that was kind of an unnatural hand gesture, but I get it. It's consistent throughout that first season. He kind of makes the same sort of gestures. He speaks in a William Shatner-esque way where he kind of like has bursts of speech and then has a little pause and then another burst of speech and a little pause. I don't mind that one bit. I did really, really appreciate the variety in the types of episodes that you get in that first season. You got some like metaphysical stuff, you've got some like sciency stuff, you've got some action adventure, you've got some horror kind of like mixed in there. Uh, so in that 26 episodes, they're not all bangers, but there's a lot of bangers in there, and there's just a lot of variety to enjoy. So I've spoken for a long time, but those are kind of my thoughts on the show. Overall, I really, really like this first season, especially I've watched three-quarters of the episodes. I've got a few more to watch to finish up the season. Um, and that trailer that we just watched makes me want to watch season two so much. So I'm probably going to watch that too, despite what people tell me.
Well, I'm curious to hear what David thought, being the young one amongst us. I know he didn't get a chance to watch all of them. We talked a little bit yesterday, but he did watch quite a few of them. What did you think, David?
I'm just happy to be on the show, man. But yeah, I I saw the first one, which was the opening, and I thought it was okay. I did have to notice though that zipper that you guys were mentioning about how to get into the spacesuit. I didn't know that was the only direction you could get your suit on. I thought there was a like a zipper in the back for some reason, but I guess not.
That's it.
I did like the coloration though that they had like the indication of what field they belong into. The different like kind of like what Star Trek did. But yeah. Other than that, let's see here. I saw the other one that looks like it kind of ripped the story off of the cage, where they went to like Alpha Centauri, I guess, and they were like picturing, giving people imaginations about like what was real and what wasn't. I think it was like called the Death Machine or something like that. And so then at the very end, they revealed that it all didn't really happen, but it could have happened if you guys went this direction with your violent nature kind of thing. I was like, oh, okay. But let's see. The other one I saw was the Dragon's Domain because I understand you guys were like super horrified watching that, and I'm like, yeah, I can see how that could really mess with people's minds seeing it at a young age. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know. To me though, when I was watching it, I was like, this doesn't seem that scary. But then, of course, Jim told me that if you were like 10 years old, it probably would have scared the pants off you. But but other than that, yeah, I didn't really. I don't know. I mean, it was interesting. I enjoyed some of the story and the dialogue that they had, and the little what do they call that? The techno babble that they got going on in the show. But other than that, it was I don't know. I guess the way I would put it is Space 99 is well Space 99. So it is what it is, I guess. But that's yeah. I don't know. Are we giving any numbers for this at all, or
9.99
there you go.
for Paul. Well, Charles, you get to bring up the caboose on this one, buddy. What do you think? Space 1999, yay or nay?
Well, okay. I look at this show and I get I ideas from other 70s shows that kind of come to mind. When I see this woman leaping, you show me the commercial for season 2, it's like, okay, where's that bionic sound I should hear? Because that's exactly what I said. I see her doing that. It's like, okay, that looks like something like Steve Austin would do. Which that series, even a little bit of Battlestar Galactica, I think almost appeared in this episode, even though that was still years down the line. Paul mentioned it was the only sci-fi. It's like, well, I think as Jim mentioned, there was one other sci-fi program kind of going with it, and that was Doctor Who. But in the States, we weren't getting a lot of Doctor Who either. That was British sci-fi, which got a lot bigger later. Even
So was Space 1999? I mean, it was broadcast in the U.S. because you guys both saw it when it was on, right?
probably I didn't
But it
see
was a
Yeah,
it.
but they
British
didn't
show.
have
PBS.
And not you, Charles, but like these other two guys
Yeah.
saw it like
The old
as it came out.
they didn't have like a network deal, right? They couldn't get it hooked up with like if like say for example like if you had an ABC affiliate, right?
Ah,
They wouldn't
okay,
show it during prime time. They might show it at some weird time like Sunday afternoon at 4 or something, right?
I see.
And so it was basically kind of, they couldn't really crack a network deal, and that's what they were trying to do with rejiggering everything for season 2, right? But it was basically in the oddest market hodgepodge ever. Like Jim seeing it on PBS, right? I'd never even knew that it showed on PBS before. We got it out here on, I think, like the ABC affiliate on like Sunday afternoons or something. It was just crazy. So it was just all over the place and very random, which made it really hard to be successful because it was like you couldn't really get the ratings on it. And it was like word of mouth. It's like, well, my friend in Idaho saw it like at a different time than I did. So it was, challenging. Weird era. Like Jim said, we didn't have cable back then, man. It was like if you were lucky, you had 4 channels. That was it.
Yep, that was
Well,
it.
I would
4.
say I
And you
was
never knew if you'd come back and play again.
I
Yeah,
would
for
well, for
sure.
me it was 5 whole channels. We had the 3 public channels, we had PBS, and we had 1 independent. And so I remember watching a few episodes of Doctor Who, the Tom Baker era on PBS. It would be Saturday afternoons after Saturday morning cartoons. It was like a day was too hot to
Yep.
go out or too wet to go out. You might stay home and watch a little TV, and that's where you get to see some of this stuff.
Yeah, so,
But
we've
but I look at
talked.
but you mentioned age. Paul was like, "Oh, I was in my early teens." Like I would have been about 7, 8 when this came out. So I probably just didn't catch on to it back then, but I realized, oh yeah, but then Star Wars came out and that whole realm of sci-fi came out, and all of a sudden I got heavy into really liking a lot of sci-fi.
It's amazing. I think shows like this really help me understand why Star Wars was as successful as it was because that is built to be kid friendly, right?
Yeah.
It's built to have very simple good versus bad, lots of spaceships, lots of lasers. Like there's not I'm not poo-pooing Star Wars at all, but it's very simple compared to a lot of the things that we
Yes.
see in both Star Trek and Space 1999 in terms of plot, in terms of character interaction, in terms of writing. Like, yeah. So the fact that that was my intro to I always tell people I feel like you start, well, maybe not everybody. Many people start on Star Wars and then they grow into some of these other shows because they crave something more, than just, I don't know,
Well,
Exactly.
what you
Space
get in Star Wars.
1999 never got the reboot like Galactica got, like Star Trek got. I think Space 1999 is overdue for a rebirth to be discovered by the general public. But before we go too far, we've been talking a lot about season 1 and season 2. Now, season 2 came along. They got rid of Dr. Bergman. Where did he go? He just
Oh,
disappeared,
that's too bad because he's my
right?
favorite character from
He just
season 1. He's like the
wh-
old sage that everybody's always asking advice of.
where did
That's
he
too
go,
bad.
Paul? I don't remember what happened to him. He just wasn't there. Did they
I
ever
think
say?
they never really were super specific. I think there was one, I don't remember which episode, but a vague reference to him dying, right? Like, oh, because he was older or something and some accident, but it's super, super vague. I don't even know if they even really addressed it, right? It was just like,
He's gone.
we kind of just it's just like, well, let's get to let's get to the babe and how short can we make her skirt. That was where they're going with Maya,
Yeah,
right? And it is a pretty good pilot, I have to say, for season 2, where they introduce Maya, where you'll talk about this later, Uncle Jim, with Brian Blessed, but they put together a pretty good reboot with that. It's pretty fun, but it was just like, it would have really, Barry Morse is a great actor, like Eric said, right? And it's kind of left a big void, hard to fill, because he had more gravitas.
yeah. So season 2 introduced a new security officer, um, whose name escapes me right now.
Tony Verdeschi.
Yes, Tony. And if I remember, he was involved with Maya, right? They had a relationship. Yep,
They did.
they did. They changed the uniforms. They got the jacket, right?
The zipper and
Which they
jacket.
didn't have in season 1. And they all wore a patch on the chest of their uniform. I don't know what that was about. Um,
Because
yeah,
patches look cool.
they look cool.
that's,
Yep, they
that's
look cool.
that's literally it, man. It's like, oh, the Apollo astronauts all have their patches. We should all have patches too. So it was just, it was crazy. It was just, hodgepodge, man. But
Did
And
season 2
Space
come out like
1999
a
had the
year
phasers that
before?
had four triggers. You guys remember? You could hold it up, and there was 4 individual. Were they called phasers, Paul? I don't remember.
They were
on
called
the show,
they called them
on
lasers.
on Space
What,
1999.
were they?
Yeah.
Lasers, phasers? What are the blasters?
Oh, Uncle Jim, I'm so glad you asked. It couldn't be better timing that you asked, because what we're talking about, my friend, is the
Oh, there
stun
it is.
gun.
Oh, there it is.
It's the stun gun. All right. And this is the sidearm of anybody on Moonbase Alpha. Okay. And so you hold this and you shoot it at your enemy, right? But most importantly, you have to make sure that you have the correct setting, because you have the option to stun. But if things get really dicey, as they do in deep space, sometimes you have to kill.
Amazing.
Kill.
Okay. And so don't accidentally try to stun somebody when the kill setting's on, because, and of course, with the aliens they'd run into, half the time they'd hit kill and nothing would happen, right? Because they're magically impervious. So they had that. And then everybody had a thing called the comm lock that I'm sure you've seen, right?
Yeah.
Basically, this is like your way of getting around and opening doors, right? You'd beam a little signal and would go on there, and it'd have your identification badge on there, right? And it would have like a TV screen, which was really cool, right? So like, it was like early version of like FaceTime, right? Dr. Russell, why are you not wearing your pants? You could like check and see what's going on with your comrades there, and they would use those to get around the moon base, and you could call their little phone number and do whatever needed to do. So that's the good tech of Space 1999.
Yep, absolutely. So season 2 did have some changes. I think they changed the tone of the show. Uh, they kind of went in a different direction from season 1. Um, and it got a little bit weirder in season 2, I would say. I don't want to ruin too much for Eric, who hasn't seen season 2 yet, but uh, there are some good episodes in season 2. But overall, I think season 1 is better for sure. But are we doing something here?
No, I'm trying to get my camera to focus. I don't know why my camera's out of focus. Oh, there it goes. Woo!
You're
Sorry.
back. I think I think
Eric was
now
doing a
is
flashback of
I was
himself.
doing,
yeah.
I felt weird doing it, but I didn't know how to get my camera to focus.
Breakaway.
It's like these guys won't mind if I do
Uh,
something weird on camera. It'll be
I
fun.
Yeah.
think now is as good time as any. So, David, run the first clip, please. Here we go for the eagle.
Oh, okay. You want to skip ahead? Sure. I'll
Yeah,
get
let's
that set
let's
up.
let's let, let's get the eagle in here, since Paul
Okay,
was
cool.
showing us some cool stuff. Hey, Lele,
All right,
you're such
here is the eagle.
Alpha team in danger! Code red, liftoff!
This is Space 1999 Eagle 1 spaceship.
Alpha control, we have contact!
You can jettison the cockpit and engines, then link them up. It's Mini Eagle 1 in visual contact.
Alpha control lookup is a go!
And their Eagle 1 rescue phase is complete.
Eagle 1, Roger and out!
Space 1999 Eagle 1 spaceship comes with 3-inch figures. Assembly required. You from Mattel.
Ooh, dramatic.
I mean, that was pretty cool. That thing's big, man.
I
Yeah, it's a
had
big
that.
ass ship.
I had that toy, and it had to be 2.5 feet. It blew away the Millennium Falcon. Let me tell you, it was the coolest toy, and it predated the Millennium Falcon
Yep.
by a number of years, I might add. I remember. I don't remember what the figures were, Paul, that came with it.
They had little like 3 or 4 inch figures that were specific to the ship, right? That were just kind of almost like they almost look like the old plastic toy soldiers, right? They were just in their spacesuits,
Yeah, they were in
and kind of a
orange suits.
frozen. They weren't articulated or anything like that, right? But Mattel, who at the time released that ship, right, which was huge. I mean, there was nothing
Yeah.
like it. It was just amazing. And what's really funny, man, is it's like if you go back and look at like the great Ralph McQuarrie, right, who did the production design for Star Wars, right? And you go look at all of his production art for Star Wars, right? The early versions of the Millennium Falcon that he sketched out, it looks uncannily like the Eagle. I mean, crazy. And they sort of almost go, maybe we should, and then they got to look at the Eagle look like, and they're like, we should maybe change some things. And sort of the Falcon as we know it now was born. But it was just uncanny how much it looked like that. And then Mattel was also making these figures that were more like, the Mego type figures. And now it's kind of fun because there's a lot more adult collector stuff that's finally been licensed in the last like 10 years or so. You get ships like this, you get more realistic action figures that look like, the astronauts that have really good details to them that are
That's cool.
super fun. You can take off the helmet, no more designed for like the modern adult collector, and you can even get crazy esoteric stuff like Tony Cellini's Ultra Probe rescue
Yes.
ship, right? So like
Nice.
the Dragon's Domain ship. So there's a lot more stuff now for collectors who vex their spouses to take advantage of.
You got a good one, Paul.
So it's like, hold on. No, I'm not doing anything. I'm just
Nope.
checking the bank balance.
Nope.
Hold on. I'm fine. But yeah, this is a lot. It's like, I think finally it's like they realize that there is a lot of nostalgia, and it's a weird show because it was way more popular in the UK than it was here in the States, right? But if you go to England, you're a little bit more recognized for the love of the show. But I'm envious of you, Uncle Jim, for having the big eagle though, because I always coveted that, and it was just preposterous, and I couldn't get my parents to pony up for it.
I gotta tell you what happened to the eagle. It was very sad story. But when Star Wars came out and the Millennium Falcon, we filled up the eagle with firecrackers.
Oh no!
And Alan Carter crashed it for the final time, and that it didn't survive.
Wow.
But it was
That
cool.
is well. What a way to go! That seems epic and appropriate, though. I mean,
That seems like an opening credits scene right there.
I bet you had a lot of fun doing that, man. I bet that was a blast.
That eagle was awesome. But wait, there's more. David, roll clip number 2.
Okay, let me get it set up. I didn't realize we're skipping ahead. Sorry.
Well, you got to be prepared.
Okay.
We never know where we're gonna go when we start down the
Here we
journey.
go.
Here we go.
You get.
Oh, I hit play.
You gotta hit play.
Hey, I hit play. Okay, something's off. Hold on. It's not wanting to
It
do
worked
my
during
thing.
our test.
Yeah. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me.
Oh well.
Oh no. There we go.
You're in space, 1999, with the crew of Moon Base Alpha Command Center. Commander Koenig, Dr. Russell, Professor Bergman.
Alien ship on radar.
Astro Flash computer confirms enemy attack. Red alert.
Locked. Eagle spaceships.
The Astro Flash network beams in the alien's position.
Lasers ready. Eagle, fire!
The enemy ship retreats.
Return to Alpha.
Space 1999 Moonbase Alpha Command Center and Astro Flash computer comes with the commander, doctor, and professor. Only from Mattel.
That thing
Wow.
looks awesome.
Yeah.
Astro Flash computer. I think we need one of those.
Was that a term that they used on the show? I don't remember that.
I sure don't remember it being. No.
But this predates Star Wars, like Paul said. This was all pre-Star Wars.
Yep.
So Mattel was actually onto something before Star Wars. And Paul, I never had the Astro Flash computer playset. I only had the Eagle. Did you ever have that one?
No, I never did. I never had that. I was busy chasing down, to get I think $6 million man figures at the time, right? So, it was just,
But I do have a question though. So in all of the season 1 episodes that I have watched so far, the Eagles have threatened to fire upon people, but they have never actually fired weapons on anybody. Presumably they have weapons, and presumably at some point they fire them.
You haven't.
I'll wait till
gotten to this-
season 2.
You haven't gotten
Okay.
to this episode
No,
yet.
I think
Okay.
I think I remember season 1. They were fighting some enemy, and I think they actually fired look like lasers at other ships.
Where does
Well,
the laser come out of the ship?
Front.
There's actually
I think it comes out of somewhere like below
Below there?
somewhere.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I think so.
I just have like
actually,
skipped around and watched
oh.
a bunch of episodes, and I guess I just missed all the ones where they actually fire.
I
there's
think
an
you'll see.
attack eagle called the Hawk that you see in one of the episodes.
I think
It's
you'll see
orange in
them.
color.
I think you'll see them fighting in war games.
Okay,
Yes.
I haven't seen
Yep.
that one yet.
Yep.
Got it.
And if I remember correctly, Moonbase Alpha has laser turrets as well that are meant to deflect asteroids or something. And
Oh, get this. Okay, not only that, in season 2, this is one of the most badass things in season 2, right? There's this huge ship is coming to attack them, right? And all of a sudden, Koenig makes some command, and turns out they've had like freaking laser tanks, right? It's hidden around, and they deploy these huge tanks, man, with lasers on them. And there's like 3 different kinds, and it was just like, oh man! And the special effects were so cool, man. They were like laser tanks. Where have you been hiding those, Koenig? It was just great, and they were so cool.
Love it.
So that's the best part of that. And Maya is the best part of season 2.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like, damn, where's my model of that? Like,
They never
come on.
made that toy. All right, so we're gonna mess with David's head even more. I went back. Now, there's been a lot of guest stars on Space 1999, so it was hard for me to break it down. But I went back and I looked up the IMBD and I pulled out what I consider to be some of the most notable people that appeared on Space 1999. Just to wet your whistle a little bit, so you guys can look for these particular episodes if you feel so inclined. And I just threw them out there. So Eric, I think I threw the first one at you.
I think
Oh, yeah.
actually,
Yeah.
Huh?
yeah.
Yeah,
That's him.
here it is. Okay. Yes, I see. Joan Collins, Mission of the Darians, most famous for her role in American soap Dynasty. The variety of roles played by Joan Collins is much more diverse than many realize. Snickers averts notwithstanding. Not only did she once play Fred Flintstone's mother-in-law, but in the last 10 years alone, she has appeared in both Agatha Christie's Marple and Footballers' Wives. I don't know when this article was written. Likewise, it is unsurprising that Space 1999, in which she played the essentially cannibalistic Darian Kara, wasn't her
Spoiler alert.
wasn't oh my god wasn't her first foray into the world of science fiction. Back in the 60s, she had previously appeared in the acclaimed Star Trek episode City on the Edge of Forever as Edith Keeler. Far from the only woman to be romanced by Captain James T. Kirk, she is, however, the only one who many believe he ever truly loved. Ah,
Dun,
Joan
dun,
Collins.
dun.
Well, we'll see about that.
What? Yeah, Strange New World season 3 or 4.
Yes,
Yeah.
Define love, if you will.
Right.
Oh.
Right on.
And Paul gets the next one.
Yeah, that's a great episode too. Mission of the Darians is great. Julian Glover, check out that mug, okay? And I think science fiction fans will definitely recognize this is a cat who is no stranger to cult TV. Julian Glover's made all kinds of guest appearances throughout the 60s in such classic shows as two of my favorites, The Saint and the Avengers. Okay, not the Marvel Avengers. No. I'm talking about the British Avengers, Jonathan Steed and Emma Peel. That's what I'm talking about, right? And he was often a bad guy on those shows, right? Two great spy shows. He's also twice able to appear on Doctor Who. First as Richard the Lionheart, and again about 12, 14 years later as a bug-eyed alien Scaroth. And again, this is in the Tom Baker era of the serial, which also had an appearance from Catherine Schell, just to close the loop there a little bit. Now, in Space 1999, Julian Glover played Jarek, okay? And he is an alien who's in search of not just a home, but also a body to live in. Uh-oh. Hope he doesn't covet yours. And in movies, he's appeared in all kinds of 80s classics, right? Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, right? As the guy who's funding the mission, who wants that recipe for immortality, and of course Empire Strikes Back, General Veers, right, leading the AT-AT attack on Hoth. That's General Veers, right? The Empire Strikes Back, For Your Eyes Only, where he faced up against Roger Moore as Bond villain Christados, and for about good 5 or 6 years, he was a regular on Game of Thrones as Grand Meister Pycelle, perhaps the only character to somehow manage to avoid getting killed and have some measure of consistency throughout all of his different times on the various years on that show, because people did seem to meet with untimely ends on Game of Thrones. So a real legend for genre, film, and television. Really cool to be able to see him on here. So again, Julian Glover from the episode Alpha Child. And Jim, what you got?
Well, for those of you who remember Star Wars, you remember this guy that wore black and he had asthma. He breathed really heavy. Well, we're talking about David Prowse himself, and there he is, right there from the Space 1999 episode, The Beta Cloud. And of course, he was the cloud. Well, in this case, he's the alien, but there he is. He was often cast in roles that required the height of 6'6", which is what he was. David Prowse's career is notable for the characters which required intimidating presence, such as Darth Vader. This ranged from bodyguards in A Clockwork Orange and the Hitchcock's Guide to the Galaxy TV series to perhaps the most famous villain in cinematic history, we already talked about, Darth Vader. This list also includes the deadly cloud creature who boarded Moonbase Alpha with the sole purpose of taking the vital life support system. He was also a bodybuilder, and he won the British Heavyweight Weightlifting Championship 3 years running. And there he is. You can't tell that that's him, but yeah, that's him. And I'm going to continue on because we're on the Star Wars kick here. So let's stick with Star Wars. And the next person that we have that appeared on Space 99 and also Star Wars is, there he is, Peter Cushing. And of course, he played Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars. And this is a picture from the 1999 episode, The Missing Link. An actor most famous for his various roles in many Hammer House of Horror films is perhaps that of Abram Van Helsing, which was the most frequent character. His portrayals of Sherlock Holmes also endeared him to both film and television audiences alike. And although often overlooked, he also played the role of Doctor Who in the two spin off feature films, which helped Dalek Mania sweep the globe throughout the 60s. Ever the curious scientist in Space 1999, he played the golden hued Ron, and there he is, describing himself as human but reaping the benefits of an extra 2 million years of evolution. He is the Xenite anthropologist who intends to keep Commander Koenig permanently captive and study him. Dun dun dun! What an evil, evil plot. Charles, who's on your list of Space 1999 notable actors?
Okay, I have Pierre Throtkin from the Dorcons. Despite being the first actor to play a role as Robin Hood on TV, Patrick Troughton is undeniably the most famous for playing the second incarnation of the Doctor. After initial 3 years running, in fact, returning to the Doctor Who 3 more times through its run, his final appearance was a role in 1985. The opposite of the compassionate Time Lord, however, as the Archon leader of the Dorcons. He was willing to kill Maya to ensure his own immortality. On the silver screen, he also appeared in the Omega alongside Gregory Peck, as well as two classic Ray Harryhausen ventures, Jason the Argonaut and Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger. He continued to act until his death in 1987, and one of his last appearances was in the pilot episode of Inspector Morse.
He was the
Awesome.
priest in The Omen who got the weather vane impaled in him.
Yeah, that was a cool scene.
Or whatever it was, the big lightning rod. Yeah, it was great.
And I've got the next one here, and Paul mentioned this earlier. There he is, right there. You guys should be able to tell who he is. He's got the same face right there. Of course, he doesn't have the wings in this picture, but we're talking Brian Blessed, who in this particular scene was Maya's father in the Metamorph, but he also played in Death's Other Domain. The British act. Oh, and I also got to throw in there, if you guys read the Patrick Stewart Make It So book, he was good friends with Patrick Stewart. They went to the same school and studied acting together. So he has a tie to Star Trek indirectly through Patrick Stewart. A British actor of the highest magnitude, Brian Blessed, is one of only a handful to appear in Space 1999 as two separate characters. Firstly, as an 800-year-old survivor of the 1986 Uranus expedition, Dr. Cabot Rowland. Hi, Leia. And Leia just jumped up here to say hello to everybody. He then returned at the beginning of the following season as Maya's father, the aptly named Mentor, and that same year was also cast in the lead role in Jerry Anderson's pilot for The Day After Tomorrow. Three roles which are hardly surprising for someone who loves space so much that he also completed 800 hours of space training in Moscow. This is just one of his many accomplishments away from his acting career. However, as he has also made 3 attempts at climbing Mount Everest. He's the oldest person to ever reach the North Pole on foot and also the official shoutsperson of the University of York's Douglas Adams Society. For me, he'll always be known from Flash as Prince Voltam. With the wings, his Hawkmen were awesome. Don't you think, Paul?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's great. He's just so much energy with Brian Blessed. He's just amazing. Still out there, real gregarious, effusive dude. He was in. If you're a fan of Kenneth Branagh's Henry V, he's got a great part in Henry V too, and in Branagh's Hamlet. So he's a real one of those classically trained Shakespearean actors who just commands every scene he's in. He's just a delight. Really, really charismatic.
And you've got the last two, Paul. I put these
All
ones.
right, I'll move it. I'll move into the next stage here, guys. Sorry, I was like reminiscing.
I put these two in there just for you,
Thanks, brother.
specifically.
Well, it's not often that you get to talk about one of your heroes and your legends, and this was only the fifth episode to be produced of Space 1999, right? And they cast, inarguably, the most iconic British actor ever to grace the screen, the great Christopher Lee, um, recognized by none other than the Guinness Book of World Records as having the most screen credits for any living actor. Okay, a record which included his portrayal here of Captain Xantor, leader of a small group of Caldorians that are heading to Earth after their own planet became sterile. Rising to fame with starring turns as Frankenstein's creature and Dracula in the Hammer horror films. Although, unlike Cushing, it was his villainous roles which often became his most successful. Count Dracula, of course, leading the pack. Something which continued for more than 50 years with films such as The Wicker Man. Oh, The Wicker Man is so good. It's such a great horror film. Gremlins 2, and then he later appeared as, of course, Saruman in Peter Jackson's Middle Earth trilogies and Lord of the Rings. So really, really phenomenal actor there. He was in 1941 for Steven Spielberg. He also forged a kind of late in life but successful singing career, combining opera and heavy metal, believe it or not. And in 2013 became the oldest living artist to enter America's Billboard music charts at the age of 91. Mind blown. A real interesting life this guy had. Widely considered his was related to Ian Fleming, okay, who created James Bond. And Christopher Lee's exploits as an intelligence operative during World War II apparently were a big inspiration for Ian Fleming creating the James Bond character. That's the kind of stuff this guy was involved in. So, an absolute legend, and really cool to be able to see him on Space 1999 as well. And we're going to talk about a series regular on the show, inimitable Nick Tate. This guy is still going around to like Wonderfest every year and conventions all over the place. Genial, likable guy. You can see him in all different kinds of shows. He was at several big parts on Lost, the TV show. He was in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation we'll talk about. But he played the great Eagle pilot, Alan Carter, Moonbase Alpha's chief Eagle pilot, and the only person on Alpha to have actually seen the nuclear explosions from space that ripped a moon from its orbit and hurled it into deep space, because he was up there in an Eagle at the time. He's been in two different episodes of Star Trek. The first was in Next Gen, where he played, again, another shuttle pilot. That's a insurance risk right there. Captain Durgo in the Next Gen fourth season episode, Final Mission, which is great. And oddly enough, yes, he crashes the shuttle, which has got to be a tip of the hat to Alan Carter. And then in his second appearance, he played Liam Bilby in the Deep Space Nine sixth season episode, Honor Among Thieves. So really, really fun to be able to. Alan Carter was in all of the episodes for both seasons. The great Nick Tate, very charismatic and fun. He was sort of almost the Han Solo role in a way, just getting in there and doing all the action stuff and flying in the midst of anything. Never one to turn his back on an encounter. So real great. So hooray! It's been so fun to be able to talk about Space 1999, guys. I never thought we'd be doing this, but what a treat.
Yeah,
I think it was.
so,
I think it was fun. I think it went well.
yeah, in that Deep Space Nine episode, did he try to steal a shuttle? Honor Among Thieves?
It's possible. Possible.
Yeah, I'd have to ask my Deep Space Nine expert, Eric, on
Eric.
that one.
Yeah, I thought I might get asked about that. I'm having a hard time remembering the specifics of that episode right now. Darn it.
Well,
But
that's
I just,
okay.
it's really fun. It's just like for folks who like have been watching, listening to our show, and they're like, "What the hell are you talking about?" I mean, I'll tell you one thing that's really great is this is one of those shows that has been really well restored and probably looks better now when you look at it than it ever did in 1975. I mean, it's just, they do a pretty good job of restoring these old cult shows, and they generally are really fun to go back and take a look at and just appreciate its place. Some of it's going to look cheesy, for sure. Some of it's going to be like eye-rollingly incomprehensible and stretch your, suspension of disbelief, but just, put it in its place, in the history of science fiction. I think it deserves a place of renown. So it was really pretty cool, and for me, very personally fun to be able to recommend to talk about the show because I really remember it fondly from my youth.
It definitely deserves a reboot, a remake, or a movie of its own. It's the time has come. It's overdue. So, Space 1999. There you have it. All right, you know what time it is now? It's time for our Star Trek birthdays.
That was not a Klingon song.
Mr. Worf says that every week, but we still love him. So every week we like to go through our Star Trek birthdays, and so you can find out who you share a birthday with. And we always turn to Eric to start off with our remembrances so we can fondly remember those members of our family who are no longer with us. Take it away, Eric.
Yeah, and Jim, in a rare moment, we are going to first celebrate somebody who was not on Star Trek, but who we've been talking about all night long. The great actor Martin Landau, born June 20th, 1938. We lost him back in 2017. I have written a lot of stuff about him here, but I'm going to paraphrase because this man's depth and breadth of stuff in his lexicon of acting is really incredible. I'll start by telling you that I found it interesting that at age 17, he was actually hired by the New York Daily News to work in the promotions department before he became an actor, and he was a staff cartoonist and illustrator. He worked there for 5 years. So he started in the kind of like newspapery cartoon world, but his real ambition was to move on to acting. And in 1951, he made his stage debut in Detective Story at the Peaks Island Playhouse in Peaks Island, Maine. And he also made his first off-Broadway debut that same year in First Love. Landau acted during the 1950s in many, many things, lots of stage acting along the way. In 1963, he played memorable roles in the science fiction anthology series The Outer Limits. And the thing that I think really got him known, somebody is making a ton of background noise right now. The thing that made him really, really well known in the eyes of the public was his role, of course, in 1966 when he was in Mission Impossible. That's the one that made him famous. He was originally not meant to be a regular on the series, which also, of course, starred his wife of the time, Barbara Bain. But his character, Roland Han, was supposed to only make occasional reoccurring appearances, but he became so popular, they decided to keep him on the show. I think that was fantastic. His career eventually kind of went through some dips and some changes and stuff. Of course, Space 1999 from 1975, 1976. The early 80s were kind of tough for him, but then he had a big renaissance of his in his career in the late 1980s and into the 1990s. The thing that I remember, well, many things I remember seeing him in, but I remember him being Bela Lugosi in Ed Wood. He was, of course, in Sleepy Hollow. Lots of other things from that era. So Martin Landau does have his own star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. You should go check it out. It's been really fun to talk about him all night. And unfortunately, we did lose him about 8 years ago or so. So happy birthday and lots of love and remembrances going out to the great Martin Landau. Happy birthday as well to David L. Lander, the actor who played the Ferengi tactician in the Star Trek Next Generation second season episode Peak Performance. Of course, you may recognize him from other roles, right? His most famous role is absolutely as Andrew Squiggy Squigman. Is it Michael McKean's Lenny Kozlowski on Laverne and Shirley from 1976 through 1982. He, in fact, did a ton of work with Michael McKean. They both went to school together at Carnegie Mellon. They did tons of television shows, television movies together. They actually released an album in 1980 called Lenny and the Squigtones. I feel like I need to go check that out. And then, of course, he did do some work without Michael McKean along the way on shows like The Bob Newhart Show, Barney Miller, Highway to Heaven, Head of the Class, and The Nanny. Eventually, in his later career, went into voiceover roles. And unfortunately, in 1984, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, but he became kind of a spokesman for that disease and went around touring, talking about it. In 2002, he published his autobiography called Falling Down Laughing, How Squiggy Caught Multiple Sclerosis and Didn't Tell Nobody. Just really, really endearing. What a fun actor who's very recognizable from that era of television. David L. Lander would have had a birthday on June 22nd. He was born in 1947. Happy birthday, David. And last on my remembrance list is actor George Murdoch, the actor who portrayed God in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. He also portrayed J.P. Hansen in the Next Generation third and fourth season episodes The Best of Both Worlds and Best of Both Worlds Part 2. In the pre-production of The Final Frontier, director William Shatner had originally planned to cast Murdoch for the role of Cord, but when Charles Cooper read for the role, Murdoch was recast for the role of God. So we could have had a very different Klingon. Murdoch is probably best known by fans for two reoccurring roles as Lieutenant Ben Scanlon, the acerbic international affairs officer on Barney Miller, and as the overstressed and bitter Dr. Salak on the original Battlestar Galactica. He was also in an episode of Seinfeld as a Russian writer Elaine works to get for her publishing house employer. He also appeared on a couple of other television series along the way. George Murdoch would have had a birthday June 25th. He was born in 1930. Happy birthday, George Murdoch. And that, everybody, does it for our remembrances. So I will pass this flaming birthday candle on to my good friend Charles.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Let's start with a happy birthday to Marcy Lafferty, actress who played Chief DeFalco in Star Trek The Motion Picture. Lafferty was married to William Shatner from 1973 until their divorce in 1994. Happy birthday to John Wheeler, actress who made his major television debut as Gab in the TOS episode The Journey to Babel, as we get to see him in all that makeup. Happy birthday to Lindsay Ridgway, actress who portrayed Sisparilla in Star Trek Voyager's second season episode Cold Fire. It's a child actress. Paul, who's on your list?
Thank you, Charles. Well, first of all, let's go back to the original series for a bit, and let's give it up to luminary Mariette Hartley, Emmy award-winning actress who played Zarabeth in that memorable third season episode, All Our Yesterdays. I think definitely one of the better third season episodes for sure. Really interesting series of scenes between her and Spock in that particular episode there. So definitely a good one to check out if you haven't seen it for a while. Excited to say this next one. This is a live wire guy for sure. The great Peter Weller, who can really mix it up with an audience at a fan event, let me tell you. So he's a very smart individual, veteran actor who we acknowledge in Star Trek for playing John Frederick Paxton in Enterprise fourth season episodes Demons and Terra Prime. And then he came back to the Star Trek universe, to the feature film franchise, to play Alexander Marcus, I believe falls underneath the evil admiral category, if I'm not
100%.
100% evil.
100% evil.
But brings some really good gravitas. I think he's one of the coolest things about Into Darkness, frankly. And he's got the starship to prove it. Really, really great. But of course, if you're a genre fan, forever, and it may vex him to no end, I know, Peter Weller, but Alex Murphy, OCP officer from RoboCop, right? I mean, that is just like one of the greatest roles ever, and at least one sequel, perhaps even more, that it was featured in there. But he's a really interesting cat, Peter Weller is, and you may sometimes be amazed to see him listed as Dr. Peter Weller. And you're like, what is that? Is he going to take out my gallbladder? What's going on? No, 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 friends. He's a very multifaceted individual. And he actually has a doctorate, a PhD in Italian Renaissance art history and Roman history. So this is a very cerebral cat. And he's also taught both literature and fine arts up at Syracuse University. So is a very academic individual there. And I don't want to forget another cult film that is a big favorite of a lot of science fiction fans is The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, right? That's another terrific picture there as well. So a really great dude, and just nice to see that he's got his tenterhooks all through the Star Trek franchise there. So very, very cool. And surprisingly, you must look beneath the prosthesis to see this gentleman, but let's give it up for rock and roll legend Mick Fleetwood, okay, drummer of the legendary musical group Fleetwood Mac. He had a cameo part underneath all that crazy costuming as an Antedian dignitary in the Next Gen second season episode Manhunt. Very, very cool to know that he's in there. I guess sometimes if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll just do whatever role you can get just to get on the show. And I think that might be part of the case there. So very, very cool to see all these folks who show up in different aspects of Star Trek. Boy, does Uncle Jim have a good one to honor next. Someone we've been lucky enough to spend some time with. Right, Uncle Jim?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Absolutely. Yeah, I saved the Klingons for myself, and well, you guys aren't going to think of this guy as a Klingon, but he was. He did play a Klingon on Deep Space Nine. Of course, we had him on the podcast as well. We want to say happy birthday to the great Tim Russ, and there he is. You guys can go over to trektalking.com and you can check out our interview with Tim Russ. It was a lot of fun. He was a great guy. He's best known for his portrayal of Lieutenant Commander Tuvok on Star Trek Voyager. He reprised the role on Star Trek Picard Season 3, and he also directed the Voyager 4th season episode Living Witness. He was also in Star Trek Generations, and on Voyager in the episode Flashback, we find out that he's the one that brings Captain Sulu his tea, that teacup that doesn't survive. That was him. But for me, Spaceballs. He ain't found shit. He's still looking. There he is. Mel Brooks Spaceballs. Spaceballs Part 2 is coming out. Maybe Tim Russ will find something in that second movie. Who knows? So happy birthday to Tim Russ. And I have one that's not on the list because I just found out about it today. I don't know how I missed it when I was putting the list together. So we don't have a picture, but we want to say happy birthday to Jesse James Keitel, who of course played Captain Angel on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Serene Squall episode. And I have to mention that because that's the episode that introduces us to the back of Cybok. And hopefully they'll go somewhere with that. I can only hope and pray. So happy birthday to Jesse James Keitel, Captain Angel from the Serene Squall episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and presumed lover of Cybok. We don't know, but that's what we're presuming. So happy birthday, Jesse James Keitel. And that wraps up our birthdays. There wasn't that many. I trimmed them down quite a bit because I wanted to talk about Space 1999 as much as we could. I wanted to give it a full show. So I cut out a lot of birthdays to do that. And yeah, so that's why we didn't have a lot this week. And now it's time for some Star Trek news. And we definitely got to come up with a new video.
Priority 1 message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel. Incoming transmission. Enter authorization code. Command codes verified. Define parameters of program. Level 9 authorization required. Specify parameters. Transfer of data is complete. Blank alert. Blank alert.
All right. So, Eric, you get to start off with our first news story of the week, and I think it's a fun one.
It is a fun one, Jim, and it is a remembrance of 20 years ago, remembering the day Star Trek legend William Shatner crooned "My Way" to Star Wars creator George Lucas. Attendees at the 33rd Annual American Film Institute Life Achievement Award ceremony honored Star Wars creator George Lucas got a surprise from the Final Frontier when, of all people, William Shatner, Star Trek's original Captain Kirk, arrived on stage to open the festivities. It happened on June 19th, 2005, and it remains an indelible moment of entertainment. Galaxies colliding. Shatner basked in the moment, giving a remarkable Shatnerian performance. He hammed it up, smiled broadly, joked about his hair, comparing it to the honoree's iconic follicles, and yes, sang. Shatner then elicited chuckles with his opening line, "Star Trek changed everything." He then cracked, "Aren't these Star Trek conventions wonderful?" And from there, Shatner engaged in his signature talk sing warbling, delivering a Star Wars themed reimagining of Frank Sinatra's song My Way that even made an amusing dig at Howard the Duck, an infamous Lucas produced box office and critical dud, although I would say cult classic at this point. It builds to a crescendo, with stormtroopers forming a kick line and dancing with Shatner in the middle before they carry him away. Of course, Shatner gets in the last word, putting a Star Trek spin on his exit. "Live long and prosper, George." Well, live long. You already prospered enough. That's a great video. I think you could find it on YouTube if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so
And
too.
Yeah, I was gonna play when I found that story, I was gonna actually show the video, but like I said, I tried to trim the show down to its bare minimum so we could talk about Space 1999. I was originally gonna have David play that quick video because watching Shatner do this, it was hilarious. But you guys can find it on YouTube. That's where I found it.
well, yeah,
It,
hard
you
to
know,
hard to believe it's been 20 years already. That's amazing.
Wow.
yeah, and we got to remember there's a lot of fans out there that might not have seen it or don't remember it. So uh, check it out. It's definitely something worth watching. I think it's up there with the Get a Life skit from Saturday Night Live. Um, you know, Shatner at his best. Oh, all right. And Paul, I think you're wrapping us up with our Star Trek news this week.
All right, man, let's move from the past of science fiction into what we have coming that we can look forward to very, very soon. Killian O'Sullivan says his Roger Corby has a smidge of darkness in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3. Something new for Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds is the addition of Irish actor Killian O'Sullivan in a recurring guest role as Dr. Roger Corby, a character from the original series episode What Are Little Girls Made Of, played by Michael Strong. In that Star Trek episode, we learned that Corby and Christine Chapel had been engaged to be married. And in season 2 of Strange New Worlds, Christine Chapel was approved for a fellowship with Dr. Corby. Oh. The actor talked about how his version of the character differs from what we saw in the original Star Trek. It's still Roger Corby, but before he goes mad and tries to turn everyone into androids. But something made Corby that way. Maybe he has a smidge of that darkness in him already. But even from just the audition process, it was going to be different. Like what Jess Bush did with Nurse Chapel informed how different Corby was going to be. I'm a huge Trekkie, so just being around it was mad. I mean, my first scene on my first day was walking down the hallway of the Enterprise with Spock. That's crazy. So extremely inspiring. And getting a role in something that you've always wanted to be a part of is doubly inspiring. Now I'm just nervous about it coming out, and will Corby resonate with people? Will they like my performance in the show? But I'm excited to see this season of Star Trek that I get to be a part of. Also, just to see season 3. I mean, I know what happens. I've read all the scripts, but I'm just excited to see it all come together. And friends, as a reminder, you don't have to wait very long because season 3 of Strange New Worlds debuts in just a few short days with a double feature episode on July 17th. So you are going to get to find out and get a big hit of we've got a little bit of a dry spot without fresh Trek for a while. So we're about to slake our thirst with a two-fisted episode. cannot wait.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul. And guys, that wraps up our show. So yeah, I just want to say right now that we're not going to be having a show next week because here in the United States, that falls on the 4th of July weekend. It's actually July 3rd, but I will be up at camp. And now that we do the podcast with a video, my Wi Fi at camp is not good enough to support video. If we were doing the old podcast with audio, I would chance it. Actually, we have done it from camp with the audio, but the video, I don't think I can do it from camp. So there will be no show next week. So go out, eat some hot dogs, go to some fireworks. If it doesn't rain, and have a good time, guys. And we will be back um, on the 10th. I think it's the 10th. So just take a little vacation and we will be back. But that gives you a lot of time to go to trektalking.com and check out some of our older shows. Check out the Tim Russ interview or Bruce Horick, which was a lot of fun. So we won't be around. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you so much to David for pulling up all those videos and making everything work out and making our birthdays, enjoyable. Thank you so much, David.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And of course, thank you so much to Eric for hanging out with us tonight and Trek Talking. Thank you so much, Eric.
Absolutely. I had a great time, and thank you so much to Paul for suggesting this show. It was delightful to hear both you and Jim talk about your memories of Space 1999.
It was a lot of fun for sure. And of course, we got to say thank you to Charles for hanging out and Trek Talking with us. Thank you, Charles.
I was going to say the same thing Eric did. Thank you, Paul, for introducing me to Space 1999. It adds more
Yeah.
sci-fi to my realm right now, which I need. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you so much to Paul to not only hanging out and 1999 talking with us, but for introducing the idea of Space 1999 and making this whole show possible. Thank you so much, Paul.
It was such a treat, friends. I was to be able to revel in something that has been my own little weird nerdish, fondness for a long time. That people are like, "What?" when you mention it to them, like, "What are you talking about?" So it was really fun to be able to revisit this and to spread the word and get folks to talk about it. It's just what a treat. So, Uncle Jim, thank you for being up for this. It was really fun for me to be able to do this and just to hear that it's just fun for me to hear everybody watching episodes and seeing them for the first time to like to hear Charles talking about Voyager's Return or Eric talking about Dragon's Domain. It's just it's a trip, man. So it's fun to keep some of this stuff alive and know that some of these creations still have some mileage in them. So what a treat. Thank you.
Well, speaking of keeping things alive, and what a treat, Paul also recommended our next show, which will be on July 10th. And we're going to go all the way back and talk about who I think is the best Superman, Christopher Reeves. And we're going to talk about the
Mm.
original Superman movie, um, 1979. Classic soundtrack, classic actors, three versions of the same movie and we're going to talk about that on the 10th. So brush up on your classic OG. I don't know what you would call it because I would call it OG Superman because I think that was the first Superman that they made as a movie.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah,
Yeah.
believe a man can fly. I mean,
exactly.
that was such a great tagline, man.
This was
What
before
an epic
Marvel,
movie.
before Thor, before Captain America, before anything. We had Superman. So tune in on the 10th and help us celebrate Superman. So
And this is in preparation, I believe, for the release of the new movie. Is it not the following day? Is that what it is?
It's within a couple days.
Within
Yeah,
a couple days, yeah.
there's some early screenings. I think Amazon's hosting some early screenings that same week, but it's like, depends on where you are and what you can get into. So, but I think it's going to be a big hit. I have a hunch. I'm super excited about it. A lot of love in here. It's going to be I don't know. I go back and I watch the old Christopher Reeve one, and it's just I still get chills during some of those scenes. It's really fun.
and we will more than likely will show the trailer for the new movie and we'll share our thoughts on what we think about the movie because we wouldn't have seen it yet. So that gives you guys something to look forward to on July 10th after you come back from all your celebrations and your fireworks, your hot dogs, your apple pie, your Chevrolets, whatever. And you can come back, Chevrolets.
You're dismantling the patriarchy.
So
yes,
I'll be doing
that's
that.
an American value right there.
There you go. And so yeah. So I'm your most excellent host, Uncle Jim, saying please everybody be good to each other and stay safe. Remember, Star Trek fans are the best fans. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Live long and prosper.
All stations, ready for departure, sir. Some problem, Riker?
Just hoping this isn't the usual way our missions will go, sir.
Oh, no, number one. I'm sure most will be much more interesting. Let's see what's out there.
Eagle 1, lift off.
Engage.
Alan, get away from the control.